So hi everybody. This lecture is a part of the definitions submodule for our week one. You will sometimes have videos like this one or audio recordings of me talking you through some of the material that we're covering for the week. That won't always be the case, but in this first week especially it seemed like a good idea. One thing I'll say right off the bat is that both of our textbooks this semester, Paul Levinson's New Media, which we're reading for this week, and also this book, Spreadable Media, which we'll be starting in a few weeks. Both of these books spend a lot of time in their opening sections talking about their titles. So New Media, Paul Levinson spends a while talking about why he chose that particular term. And then the authors of this book spend a lot of time with the idea of spreadable media as well, trying to define and to explain or justify the reasons that they're using that particular term. The reason for that is that in this class we're really aiming at a moving target. Unlike a lot of college classes, the area that we're studying in social media is both brand new, but it's also changing, at a revolutionary pace. So what scholars are busy with these days, and part of what's so exciting about studying this stuff, is that we're not quite sure yet exactly what it is. And both new media and spreadable media are terms that the authors are proposing as ways that we can better understand what this massive and very new system of communication is all about. So with that, I'm going to turn now to the lecture slides for this module, and those are also available. The slides themselves are available separate from this video, and you'll find them right next to a link to the slides, right next to the link to this video in our Georgia View module. So Paul Levinson's first chapter is, of course, called Why New Media, and it is the beginning of our course in several different ways. The summary on the second slide here is intended to give you an overview of this chapter, but also as a kind of suggestion for study. In most well-written books and articles and other pieces of academic writing especially, the author has done a lot of the dividing already for you, and often will include subheadings and subsections within the work, and Levinson does that as well. A very useful study technique is to write down these subheadings in your notes, and then when you're done with the reading, look at the subheadings and try to summarize what the major point was made within that subsection. It's a great way to get a sense of the overall scope of the author's argument, and also to make sure that you've got all the pieces and understand how all the pieces fit together. So this is a summary of the first chapter, and we'll be working through it in this way. So why new rather than social media? Why use this book in this class, which of course is called Social Media? What are some of the guiding principles that Levinson suggests distinguish new media from what came before it? How it directly relates to new media principles, the things like email and web search that Levinson distinguishes from social or newer media. The order and the content of the chapters of the book themselves, which is very helpful in terms of our trajectory through the rest of the material. And then a focus on speed and the reason why he needed this new edition even just a couple of years after the old one. Having read the first edition, I can tell you that it differs significantly from the first edition. The second edition differs significantly from the first. And then we'll talk a little bit about the prime methodology, which Levinson calls learning by doing. All right, so why new rather than social media? Well, the basic point is that all media is social, right? You create something, encode it within a medium of some form in order to express yourself or to communicate. If you don't have an audience, then the medium doesn't exist. Or the message doesn't exist. So when the average person on the street calls Facebook social media, she's using a term that's a bit misleading. What makes Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all these other social media very different from what came before them is something other than the fact that they're intended to be social, they're intended to reach someone. So what Levinson suggests, as is summarized on this next slide, and as he talks about on his pages 3 and 4, new media is different because in new media, every consumer is a producer. Facebook, for example, is very much like an online newspaper or an online magazine. It's attracting viewers to content and then selling those viewers' attention to advertisers. But the difference, of course, is that unlike the New York Times or Time magazine or a television station or channel like, I don't know, MTV.com, Facebook isn't producing the content that attracts those audiences. Instead, the audiences themselves are. You get what you don't pay for, Levinson says, is the second of the fundamental principles of new media, in that people, by and large, have really resisted paying for content, especially paying for this new kind of content. He also suggests that the new media are competitive, but also mutually catalytic. The buzzword is synergy. They build on one another and they strengthen one another even while they're all competing for the same audiences and often for the same advertising dollars. And he stresses that they are more than search engines and email. And those are forms of internet-based communication that he calls simply new media. So those are his guiding principles, and again, they're outlined on pages 3 and 4. So what is this new thing, and how does it differ from the old things that used to serve us more or less well? So he calls old media media by appointment. And some of you, and certainly I, am old enough to remember a culture that was shaped by or founded on this idea of media by appointment, where you needed to be in a particular place at a particular time in order to engage, in order to become an audience of a television program or of a live band or of a recording. So new media, the first step, changes this. You can use new media on your schedule rather than someone else's. And the fancy term for that shift is asynchronicity. So, and we don't have to be synced in order to consume a new media product in the way that we did with old media. Instead, we're asynchronous. So a DVD or a Blu-ray disc is available on your time versus the 8 p.m. showing at the AMC down the block. And then TiVo has done the same thing to broadcast television, as VCRs did earlier. They're both good examples, TiVo and DVDs, of asynchronous media. And of course, our online course is another great example. Many of you would not have been able to take this class if it had been a traditional Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. section. Instead, because it's 100% online, students have much greater control over where and when they participate. Not complete control, of course, but certainly it's a revolutionary change from the requirement of carving time out of all of our busy lives in order to be in a particular place at a particular time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. And that feature makes our course new media. I'm hoping, though, that our course will be much more than this, that it will become new media. And instead of watching, listening to pre-recorded lectures like this one, we'll all be working together to produce new knowledge in which we all will share. And I see there's a typo in the slide that I need to fix there. So what that means is that our discussions, for example, are just as important as lectures like this one, because it's through the process of sharing and creating knowledge in a community that we'll better understand what exactly this new media is all about. All right, so as I said earlier, he's made substantial changes in the book between the first chapter and this one, primarily because it's very hard for a printed book to keep up. Facebook was not a secondary, but sort of a minor player within the first edition. And it's now, of course, the opening focus of the second edition, reflecting the fact that between 2009 and 2012, Facebook exploded. And it now serves well more than 1 billion users. And in fact, most of its growth projected in the near future, it will come from outside the United States, where it's still adding users at kind of exponential rates. So if you'd like to hear more about that, you can follow up on the Washington Post article, which itself is a little out of date since things are changing so quickly. Facebook now has many more than 1 billion users. Okay, so as a result of the speed of this moving target that we're trying to understand, we'll be depending less on scholarship, on the work of professors. Instead, we'll be reading more journalism because that is more current. And as I said earlier, we'll be focused on learning by doing. And that's probably the key concept or idea that Levinson's presenting in this chapter. His prime methodology, as he says it. In order to truly understand new media, you have to be actively engaged in producing that content. The main thing that we'll be producing is a YouTube video. Well, I take that back. The main separate thing that we'll be producing in this class is a YouTube video. The main thing we'll be producing is an online learning community. I hope that all of us will get to know one another much better and that we will pay careful and respectful attention to the ideas of other people. And it's through that process that we'll get to know and to understand new media in a more fundamental and significant way. Okay, so that's it for these slides. And that's it for my take on Levinson's Chapter 1. If you do have any questions, please send me an email and I will get back in touch as soon as I can. Thanks.